Hello and welcome to episode 53 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewLP. Joining me as always is the glorious League Freak, who you can find on Twitter at League Freak. How you doing there, mate?
I'm doing very well. I had the most cinematic dream of my life last night. So a big shout out to Cinnamon. Hello, Cinnamon.
And it was actually, to my amazement and almost dismay, it was actually a PG sort of dream.
Yeah. How good was it though? Maybe we should do
phenomenal.
an episode on dreams. People send us our dreams and we read them out.
We could analyse them.
Yeah, we could be use our all of our I don't know,
Skill.
skills. Yeah, I was trying to think of a better word than skills, but that's all I've got right now. I'm only one coffee in.
We've got lots of skills, so we could just put that as just something else. Add it to the resume.
Yeah, exactly. Dream. What would you call it? Dream analyzer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could just be called life analysts.
Yeah, I'm up for that.
This is the talk we usually reserve for the end of the show. We're mixing it up today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, anyway, today's episode is based around essentially a conversation that the Freaky here had on Twitter, and he pissed off a few people. So we thought we'd flesh it out and go on from there. Care to tell people what you said?
Well, just drilling down into it, basically. Robbie Farah's crap. And that's the episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. No, but what happened was, okay, so what we should have done is brought up all of the quotes and stuff, first of all. But Robbie Farah, earlier in the week, basically blasted Jason Taylor, okay, and basically said, you know, Jason Taylor told me and Rod Reddy told me that I was going to be playing reserve grade for the rest of my career, and now where are they? I'm still playing first grade, and Jason Taylor's coaching reserve grade. And then a couple of days later, Rod Reddy come out, and he basically called Robbie Farah the most selfish player he'd ever had to deal with, and said that they were right to let him go, and that look at the Tigers' record and all this sort of stuff. And this was posted out, the Rod Reddy stuff was posted out by Rugby League Week Mole, right? Mm-hmm. So I said 2 points. I made 2 points. I said, first of all, he didn't miss him because he didn't. He nailed him, I think. And number two, it's kind of hard to argue with what Rod Reddy said. I mean, Robbie Farah hasn't had that many winning seasons as one of the top paid players at a club. And of course, after that, West Tigers fans pulled out the pitchforks and started coming after me. And I thought my comments back were quite reasonable. And yeah, it just sort of descended from there. And I said to somebody called Chris Simon 1, I said, look, my podcasting partner in crime, Andrew, is a West Tigers supporter. So what we will do is we will have a look at all of this in a podcast. And that's what we're doing today.
That's it. So I'll chuck out some stats here because I'm obviously going to be playing the role of defending Robbie Farah here.
Yep.
So I'm going to start with the fact that, Robbie Farah made his debut for the West Tigers in round 13, 2003. Mm-hmm. Now, the West Tigers have won 50.18% of their games when Farah has been in their side since then. When he hasn't played for them, they've won 34.38%. Which is a massive drop down.
It is.
Also,
yes.
the one season where he played for South for the entire year and didn't play for the Tigers was 2017. Yeah. And the Tigers had 7 wins and 17 losses, which is their equal worst performance in a season.
Okay. Now,
there's some numbers for your ass.
Okay. Here are my numbers. Okay. Here are my numbers. So he makes his first grade debut in 2003, okay? Now, quickly becomes one of the top, at least 2 highest paid players at the club. I think that's fair to say, right?
Well, that was in his third year, because he played 3 games in 2003 and I think 4 the year after.
Yeah, but he's basically, for the vast majority of his career at the West Tigers, he's been one of the top two paid players, okay? I think that's pretty fair to say.
Yeah.
Okay, now, in all of that time, they've only had 1, 2, 3 seasons where they have won more than 50% of their games.
Correct.
Over a very long career, okay? Now, my point of view was that if you are one of the top paid players at a club, and you're at a club for a long period of time, and they don't win that many games, and they don't even make the finals too many times, you've got to take that on board. You've got to wear some of that. And that was my point of view, in that, Rod Reddy was right in terms of he hasn't had a career of winning football that much. And he has won a premiership in 2005. You can't take that away from him. But for the rest of his career, hasn't looked great. Hasn't looked great at all. And there's not too many players that have been at a club for that long. And somebody compared him to Nathan Hindmarsh. I think Nathan Hindmarsh didn't win a premiership, but he had a lot more winning seasons than Robbie Farah did. And I thought that, it was a fair comment that was made by Rod Reddy, that you got one of the highest paid players at the club, and when the club's not doing well, he's got to wear it. It's part of his career.
Yeah, I can understand that argument. My counter to that is to say that Robbie's not in charge of recruitment and retention, and I think we can probably argue that the Tigers have been probably one of the 3 worst clubs since 2000 when it comes to recruitment and retention.
I tell you what, I would concede that they might be the worst.
Well, I'd say they are the worst, but I'm biased because they're my team. So that's what I was thinking. They've got to be up there. I mean, the Titans are pretty bloody woeful.
But I tell you what, you think of some of the players the Titans have brought there. Can you imagine if the West Tigers had brought in and obviously he went the other way, but a Scott Prince, or a Greg Bird? These would be automatically, if say you recruited Greg Bird, he would automatically maybe be one of the top 3 recruits the Tigers have got in that time. Yeah.
I mean, when you think that Gareth Ellis is still regarded as possibly one of the best forwards the club's ever signed, if not the best.
Yeah,
and Ellis
was
good when Ellis was good when he got there. But that shows you the level of their recruitment over the years. I mean,
exactly.
They threw away Andrew Fafita and Bryce Gibbs to get Adam Blair. Fucking hell.
I'm sorry. Oh, shit.
But we're starting to get an impression here, okay? The Tigers, I should have a look at the front rowers that Robbie Farah's had around him.
Okay.
And there's been a lot.
Yeah.
Now, these are... I'm just going to cherry pick a few here.
And look, I'm willing to say, keep in mind that directly affects Robbie Farah's entire career. If his forwards aren't going forward, he's not really able to run out of dummy half too much at all. He's not getting space. This is directly affecting him more than I would say that it affects a half.
Yeah. So he's only had 5 props at the club who have played more than 50 games for the club.
Wow.
Only 5. And they are John Skandalis, Keith Galloway, Aaron Woods, Bryce Gibbs, and Todd Payton was the last one.
Damn, that feels
next,
so West Tigery.
Next is Corey Pearson, Ben Madaleno. Now we're down to Suaso Su, who played 28 games there. Avasi Manafanai, Shane Walker, who was there just as Farah was retiring. Tim Grant played 21 games. Russell Packer, 21. LaFranchi, 20.
Are you serious? Tim Grant as a front row is that high up on the West Tigers?
He's equal 12th.
Wow, that's terrible.
All right. You also got to remember he played 3 games with Danny Galea, a centre at prop. Fucking
yeah, I remember that, hey.
So it's... And that's just the front rowers.
Yeah.
When you think of the other players he's had to link with, other halves. You think of players like Tim Moulton.
Whoa.
Robert Louis.
Well, look, I was looking at their top try scorers over Farah's career before, and some of the names, there's a couple of good names in there. But then you get the likes of Daniel Fitzhenry, Tim Moulton, Tim Simona. There's some really crap players in there. John Wilson.
let's have a look at their top 10. It's Chris Lawrence, Benji Marshall, Robbie Farah, David Nofaluma, Pat Richards, James Tedesco, Bo Ryan, Daniel Fitzhenry, Taniela Tuiaki. He was an awesome player, got dudded by injury.
He was, man. He was a proper top star. So sad.
And an equal 10th, Chris Hyington, Brett Hodgson, Tim Moulton.
Yeah, that's terrible. Chris Hyington. Fuck. I'm starting to feel bad for Robbie Farah, hey?
Yeah. So it's... I find it hard to be too heavily critical, especially when you see the difference in win percentage for the club when he's on the field and when he isn't.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, says that he's not as selfish as they're making out. A selfish player is going to do whatever they can to make their stats look good. And you could argue there's a lot of players out there that fit that bill.
Yeah.
But the club as a whole is immensely better when he's on the field compared to when he isn't. I think that's got to account for something. It's not like we're not looking at 45% compared to 48%. It's 50% to 38%.
Yeah. See, okay, so I've got another counter. Okay.
Yeah.
Remember that season when you had the four horsemen of the apocalypse were holding the Tigers' feet to the fire because they were going to leave. So you had what's his name?
Tedesco, Brooks, Moses, and Woods.
Okay, yeah, all right.
The big four.
The big four, right?
With air quotes. Now, big four, air quotes, trademark.
Yeah. Now, I know, he's the medium made of that. Now, my thing at the time, right, was that why would you lock all of these players in to long-term deals and build your club around these players when they're proven that they're not winning football games when they're all there right now, okay? Now, I still stand by that. Tedesco, I think, is in a little bit of a different category because I think he was doing stuff in the West Tigers that he is kind of doing now. He's obviously a little bit of a better player now, but he was going to do what he was going to do at any club, okay? Yeah. But mostly for the rest of them, it's like, do you want to lock in all of these losers and go forward with them when they're proving to you right now that they're not winning football games? Now, there are players like that. Another one of them like that is Moses, okay? Another West Tigers superstar. There's certain players that I think they're just not winners. And now I'm not saying that Robbie Farah is one of those players, but I haven't seen anything contrary to that.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I think when Farah has been allowed to play his natural game, which we've seen a bit of this year,
yeah,
it changes the way the team plays, and they do look a million times better, and they can win those games.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell me you look at that West Tigers lineup right now and say that they're a team that should be in the top 11 or whatever they are on the ladder.
No, I mean, I think we've said this before on the podcast. The Bulldogs are definitely last.
Yeah.
And I think you could make a really good case. And this shows how well Maguire and the Tigers players are doing. That the West Tigers would be second last in terms of just pure talent on the field.
Yeah. I wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah.
And it's been that way for a long time. And again, that's not Farah's fault. I mean, even to further go through with that, I mean, Farah for a long time, and along with Benji Marshall, have been taking pay cuts to try and help the club, keep some of the other stars or lure other players to the club, that sort of thing, or keep them under the cap. And that is something that's been forgotten by Rod Redder, who Red Reddy was calling Farah selfish, which I think is just absurd. If you're selfish, you're not taking pay cuts. You don't care what the club thinks. You just want your bloody money, like Adam Blair.
Yeah. Well, to think about... Stop looking at the ground. If you think about Benji and Robbie and how many times they settled, I would say, on a contract when they would... I mean, at one point, Benji Marshall, for many, many years, $1 million player, without question. Should have been, at times, the highest paid player in the game, without question.
Yep.
And, how many times they settled. between them, they've got to be close to have giving up $1 million plus between them to the club to stay there. So you can't question that. And here's a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they made the right decision in doing that? Because I think at any point in their career, let's say go back 5 years, because the prime of their career to the early part of their career, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that at any point during that time they made the right decision to stay at the West Tigers, or should they have said, no, I want the most I can get and left?
I think Benji could have, for himself, he could have left quite early.
Yeah.
And gone and picked up big money elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Farah was chased heavily by the Titans when not long after they first came in, and he very nearly went with them.
Mm.
And he could have picked up a ton of coins there. I'm pretty sure he took a reduced offer to stay at the Tigers. But he looked at that offer pretty closely. And I think it was because it was so much more than what the Tigers were going to offer. It was just hard to not look at it.
Mm.
Both of them, though, have always been fiercely loyal to the club.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think if at any time in the history of the Tigers, if those two weren't with the club, I don't know that it would have been more attractive if they weren't there, because they were the main reason behind that, crazy attacking football the Tigers had in that 2005 to 2012 sort of 2012 period, that sort of area there.
Yeah.
It was that fantastic West Tigers attack that was a bit unpredictable, come from nowhere, and they could score points on teams of, whenever they wanted to. They were unpredictable because they'd also let a few big scores in. But that was Benji and Farah that were behind that nearly all the time.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
That would have been the draw card to get other players to the club. And I think if they had not have been there, the Tigers would have probably had several wooden spoons.
Definitely. Okay, here's another question for you, right now, today.
Mm-hmm.
Say they both up and leave today. They're allowed to go to another club. I've said this before. If Benji Marshall decided that he was going to play for 2 more years, I would happily have him as a James Maloney replacement at the Panthers. I think he would be the perfect replacement, actually. An old head on his shoulders, can lead a team around the park. I think he's proven that. And just a good off-hander to a young half, which I think he's doing very well with Brooks right now. Robbie Farah, just say you took Robbie Farah and you put him on the Brisbane Broncos. He proves that he is and I've said this to you many times, I think this is Robbie Farah's best year of his whole career. He is a different, he becomes so much more potent behind a forward pack that is young, but is raw. And if they just say, look, go forward, Robbie Farah will do the rest, I think he changes that entire Brisbane Broncos team, don't you reckon?
Absolutely.
And so that sort of bolsters the pro-Farah argument, that it's not so much Robbie Farah, that it's the club that he plays for and the players around him. He's just had mostly, there's a certain sort of player the West Tigers have. It's like they go for small forwards and wingers that are slow. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Second row is at centre. Like that sort of thing.
It's a Tim Sheens thing that got built into the club where everyone needs to be able to play the centre, second row, 5'8" occasionally, and if possible, even hooker.
Yeah.
But everyone needs to be versatile. This is a mindset that worked brilliantly in 2005.
Yeah.
That's it. Because all the rules changed and everything became forwards oriented, and they never moved with the times properly.
Can't have a winger that's over like 5'9".
Yeah. And when they do get one, it was either Pat Richards or it was Tuiaki.
Yeah, it's like
or Takiri.
Somebody says, tell me the best thing about your winger, and it's like, well, he does these short kickoffs. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Look, I don't not like Robbie Farah, because people probably get the impression that I don't like him. I just do think that, and I would say this for any player, And I've even said a little bit about when Hunt decided to, or not that he decided to, but he took the week off. I said it when Ash Taylor needed time away. There comes a point when you get a certain amount of money from an NRL club that there are not only excuses but responsibilities that you've got to take on board. And I think that when you're at a club like the West Tigers, and not just the West Tigers, but when you're at a club and they don't do well and you're the highest paid player at the club or one of the highest paid players at the club by quite some way, you've got to and even if they've built poorly, you've just got it is what it is. You've got to take it on board.
I think there's just been too much bad management at the club for the failure to be successful to be lumped on pretty much any player. You know, look at the coaches. They hung on to Tim Sheens for far too long. Definitely. They replaced him with Mick Potter, who was actually doing some good work there. Mm-hmm. But the club allowed some off-the-cuff remark by Farah some 18 months earlier to completely derail the season, completely ruin the relationship that Farah and Potter had actually built up and had improved on quite a fair bit by then. Mm-hmm. Woeful leadership from the club's management, who just did nothing to step in and nip it in the bud. They just let it fester and fester. Thankfully, the person who was the boss of the club then has moved on elsewhere. That was Grant Meyer. He was just useless. And then had an opportunity to sign some decent coaches after that, and went with Jason bloody Taylor.
Yeah. But
at a time when the club needed to, was that a time when the club needed to rebuild? You don't go and get a rookie coach who doesn't know what he's doing. That's the time when they needed someone hard-ass. And, I'm not saying this is the ideal one, but that's when they needed someone like a Brian Smith to come in, clean the bloody place out, because that's what he did best.
Yeah. And that's who they've got now. That's who they've got now.
But this is where we should have been, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, Tim Sheen's last year was 2012, right? That's a long, that's a bloody long time to be like, this is the coach we should have had after Sheen's. Craziness. But very poorly managed club. You also go through periods of time where the best thing that you could say about the club's management was that they love a photo opportunity and a morning tea. The club has been really poorly run, and there's no doubt about that. That's why their record is what it is, and that's also why they've found it hard to attract players as well. Even this year, it's been terrible. It must be heartbreaking for West Tigers fans to be linked to Watini Zalesniak, who is just the exact sort of back that the club doesn't get ever, and then it's like, he's gone for the Bulldogs. It's like, how the fuck did they fuck that up?
I'll tell you this for mate, is that the West Tigers fans are used to that, because I think plan managers just say, my player's he's in talks to the West Tigers. They just use the Tigers all the time for that stuff because it's easy. Why not? The Tigers are never going to sign them.
Yeah,
but it drives up their price elsewhere. The Tigers are never in the hunt for the top line players. They just aren't. And so what they've made a history out of just signing whoever's available, not going for who they need or what's suitable.
Yeah,
but for whoever's available.
They make do. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same problem that the Titans making in recent years.
Yes.
Just sign whatever big name's available and hope we can figure something out.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a clusterfuck.
Yeah, and look, that's why it's very strange. It's very, very strange. And I look at someone like the Panthers, and the Panthers have a bit of a different situation in terms of they at times have had terrible management, but they've always had that natural resource of the juniors that has bailed them out time and time again. And I still think Bale is bailing them out this year to a certain extent. But they've also been able to attract some bloody good players to the club. And the Panthers it's not like they're a glamour club. They're just not. And if you took the recruitment of the Panthers that have been able to do over the years, the West Tigers would take that a million times over. I think I said earlier in the year, and I can't remember why we were talking about it, but I think the West Tigers, a million times out of a million chances, would take the Gold Coast Titans recruitment of players from outside the club over their own. Because, like I said, the players that the Titans have recruited, and the Titans aren't a great club, but the players they've been able to recruit from outside the club are so much better than the ones the Tigers have been able to get.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose the upside though is they've got the Gold Coast as a location to lure people in.
Yeah,
whereas the West Tigers have got Lemire.
I don't know. Have you seen Minto in summer? It's pretty good.
Oh, fuck.
As I was saying to you the other night, Campbelltown is the only place I've ever been to where I went to use a public restroom and there was a blue light on the ceiling so you can't shoot up because you can't see your veins. And I was like, holy shit. I've only ever heard about this stuff. So there you go.
Yeah, look, I don't know. The Tigers they've for a long time what they've needed is a brim put through the place, and we finally started to get a start of that when Cleary arrived.
Yeah,
and then obviously when you start to see a bit of progress, other coaches are going to pay attention. And we had the unfortunate situation where we actually had a coach that we were happy to have in Ivan Cleary, but he wanted to coach with his son, and it became an issue that wasn't one to start with. Yeah. But the media turned it into one. The West Tigers then apparently started talking with Nathan to bring him over, which was just dumb.
Yeah.
Like, these two guys had not been working together for ages. They could go a few more years and just wait till their natural contracts ended. But they went through this madcap stupidity, and it screwed both clubs over in the short term. Mm-hmm. Panthers are finally starting to get their groove now. But the Tigers are still, I mean, it's just every bloody year has just been another rebuilding year. Oh, we've got another coach. I have to do another rebuild. Oh, he needs new players. I'm going to do another rebuild. Oh, we sacked another coach. We do another rebuild. And you're going, Jesus Christ. You started trying to build a car and they're left with a friggin' pair of shoes.
I was just about to say that. It's like they're an old Tirana that somebody's working on, and then they sell a, half-built Tirana, and the next guy's like, oh, I'm going to change a couple of things here and there, and it's just always half-built.
Yeah, now it's a half-finished lawnmower.
Yeah. It's terrible. And look, it comes down to do you think that this is a symptom of it being a joint venture club? Which it's hard to say it's the same thing as the Dragons, because the Dragons have been a bit different. But you've got the Balmain side, which is effectively non-existent anymore. Like, I don't know how it's even considered a joint venture club at this point. But do you think if this was a club that was run just by the one power base, that things would be different because you would have one direction that they were going in?
In the past, yes. I don't think so now, because Balmain's been pretty much a non-event on this team for quite a while now. Mm-hmm. West Magpies and West Ashfield pretty much run the club. That's my understanding of it anyway. I don't think any of that's the issue. I think the issue is in recent years. Let's go from, say, 1990, maybe even 92, 93. Since about then, the club's only had, between Balmain West and the West Tigers, they've only had 3 finals appearances since about 93. That's atrocious.
It really is. It's got to be the worst in the game.
And so that becomes that's now become not just a trend, that's now become quite a significant chunk of history of just being also-rans.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah, and
the problem has to start. They've got to stop looking at just replacing coaches and replacing players, because obviously that doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's people who are now controlling the club who are involved at a board level, who have been around both clubs, have been around the merger for a long, long time, who don't know anything other than finishing 9th or below. If they finish 9th and they have 12 wins and 12 losses, that's like a great season. We won as many as we lost. Hooray! No, not fucking hooray. It's got to the point now where fans are just, I'm I'm starting to get the impression that more and more fans who used to be part of this whole Balmain or Magpies division have now got over that, and they're now starting to think we just want to see the team successful. We don't even care if we don't win a premiership. Please just get us in the top 8 for like 3 years in a row would be fantastic. But that seems like such a Herculean effort to get there. I think just too much needs to change at the club. It's time they start looking at board members, and I've said for a long time they need to make drastic changes, and one of them would be build a West Tigers Leagues club, have a board which is made up of West Tigers board members, none of this Western Balmain on there anymore. They've got to start realising this club is now 20 years old. We can't still be bickering about Magpies and Balmain Tigers, all the crap that goes on with that. One bitching about too much orange being on the jumper, one bitching that Balmain doesn't have enough representation. Jesus Christ, people. There's actually now adults, 18-year-old adults, 19-year-old adults, who never saw Balmain and the Magpies play. We've passed an entire generation. We're now the West Tigers generation. It should be stuck with that. Let's just go, you know what? Let's accept that this is what's left. The two old clubs aren't coming back. West Ashfield, who pretty much control the club, have said, we're not folding this club. It's going to stay West Tigers. It's time the old clubs just shut up and get out of there. Just let West Ashfield run it. That's what I'd do.
I agree 100% with that. I do. I think they need direction. And if you look at the way the club was put together at the beginning, it's really flowed through the entire history of the club, because it's like, well, we've got two different, clubs that we're building on from below us. And then it's like, well, we're putting them together. Well, we're taking them apart. And we've got this split board, and the NRL has to come in and do some stuff with us and help us out. And then it's like, we've got 15 different home grounds, and it's like they need some direction. They need to say, this is our home ground. This is our name. This is where we're based. Instead, what it is it's like, well, we're kind of the team for, the MacArthur region, but we train at Concord, and we have 3 different home fields, and we've got this split board. And it's like, at some point, that's got to be, all of that shit has to be responsible for the fact that this is a team that is never stable. And that's it just flows onto the football field.
Yep, because they are never, ever looking forwards. They're always looking back. West Magpies always looking, how can we get back in the comp? Balmain's looking, how can we get back into the comp? You can't. Your time is over. I'm sorry to say it. I'm a historian. I love the way the game was. I wish all of those teams that were there at the very beginning were still around now. But business is business. That can't happen, and it's not happening. Got to move on. I'd say the West Tigers should be... all the clubs, all the juniors should all just be playing as West Tigers. The club should be based 100% in Campbelltown, and they should be going out there trying to, first of all, play all your games out there and see if you can get another massive upgrade on the stadium out there. Make it even better and more fantastic. Upgrade all your training facilities out there and start actually tapping into the junior base out there, and stop letting all the other clubs in the competition go out there and take those juniors. Instead, we're too busy bickering over, whether the Magpies or the Balmain Tigers are going to be able to get back up and get back in the comp. Just drop it and move on. For fuck's sake, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, this is a club that has been around longer now than the Illawarra Steelers. And it's, it's time for the club to pick and stick. And I really do. I think that what we're seeing on the field is just a symptom of a club that is... it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde to a certain extent, and they have to pick and stick. And I agree. I think that if they go to Campbell, and look, you're an old Balmain supporter. It's not even like you're an old Maggie supporter. They need to go to Campbelltown. They need to make that home. They need to train there. They need everything to be there. They need to be rudely Campbelltown, because that area is going to be absolutely gigantic.
It's
within
massive.
The next 20 years. They're going to have an airport there. You just have to drive down that way. There's all of these new houses are being built down there at Oran Park and all that. They need to do it, and they need to do it now and commit and stop this joint venture sort of lifestyle that they've been leading for 20 years, because it's been a failure.
Yeah, it's a deluded mindset.
Yeah.
They've just got to say, right, that's it. We're going to get rid of everyone on the board who's either from the Balmain Leagues Club or the West Magpies Leagues Club. That's it. You're all gone. Let's just get a bunch of business people here who know how to run a business.
Yeah.
Especially a sporting one if possible. And say, right, what we're going to do is say we're going to put out there a 10-year plan. And our 10-year plan is going to be rebranding everything so it's West Tigers, and we're going to be relocating everything to Campbelltown. We're going to try and get the stadium upgraded. We're going to try and tap into all the juniors, get them on a decent pathway, seeing back into our team, and we're going to try and make sure that we're making the finals consistently by the back end of that 10-year period. That's got to be what they're going to be looking at. Instead of sitting there going, oh, we want the Magpies back. Oh, we want the fucking Balmain Tigers back. We're going to get there. We just need a bit of money. We're going to build this development. We'll be back. And you go, no, you're not. Just quit, you idiots.
Yeah. I agree with all that.
And look, this is the shit that's been going on since 2000. And this is the reason why the club cannot and will never be a successful team. 2005, I've said it before, I'll say it again. 2005 was a fluke. They had rules just went their way, just by pure luck. And then they had a great run in the back half of the game. They played great footy, don't get me wrong. But then they had the luck of the draw in the finals, where the Cowboys played pretty much grand finals every week against, the tougher, stronger teams there. By the time they got to the grand final, they were beaten and bruised and completely worn out. The Tigers just sort of cruised through. They still had tough opponents, obviously, it's the finals, but they had an easier run than the Cowboys did. And Tigers just had more energy on grand final day. You can see that just by watching the grand final. And the fact that the Tigers did jack shit from 26 to 2010 or 2009, when they were at all their players are in the prime window there to be, playing another grand finals and playing in the finals. Couldn't even make the finals for 3 years after winning a premiership.
Yeah.
That just proves that 2005 was a fluke.
Yeah, I guess that 2005 win probably, it glossed over a lot of the really big problems that the club had, because they did it so quickly relatively from becoming a joint venture. And they did it with a bunch of youngsters. And, I mean, you look at somebody like a Benji Marshall, who's a crazy generational talent. And I think being able to watch him week in, week out and seeing the incredible stuff he was doing probably also contributed to taking the attention away from a lot of the problems the club had.
Yep, pretty much. Everything that they've done that was success-wise was about distracting themselves from the stuff that they was constantly getting bogged down in.
Yeah, like any time John Carlaw is considered a pretty decent player in your team, man.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. So, like, I guess in summing up, basically I'm right.
Well, I'm not gonna convince you, and I'm not gonna try to, but because we know each other works here. But yeah, I can't sit there and say that.
I'm not saying Robbie Farah is the only reason why they lose.
No.
I feel, and look, you can say it about Robbie Farah. I think you can say it to a certain extent. I find it hard to say it about Benji Marshall. I've seen him do some shit with some fucking players that he had no right to do. How many games have they won?
You can make the same argument with Farah, though. I mean, look what he's been able to win half his games at the Tigers. Look at the squad he's had around him.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially that forward pack. I mean, come on, that pack for so long had been just, park footballers.
Yeah.
It's in the end. I think if you take Robbie Farah and put him at the Melbourne Storm, people will be talking about him the same way they talk about Cameron Smith.
You reckon?
Yeah. They're two different players, and this is a point, okay? Cameron Smith is the best game manager you'll ever get.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Robbie Farah, though, has this. I don't think I've seen too many hookers in the game, ever, with a short kicking game that he has. Not only is it good, close to the line, but more often than nearly every single time, he gets that ball into space in the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
This is stuff that most hookers just don't do. Not even Cameron Smith does it as well and as frequently as well as Farah does. Farah's very nippy at a dummy half as well. And given that Farah's had reasonably average props around him, he's had to do some heavy work in defence in the middle. Cameron Smith does a lot of tackling as well, but I'd argue that some of the tackles Farah's had to make he's had to make more first contact tackles than Cameron Smith has had to make. Cameron Smith has been second contact more often than not, which is a lot easier on the body. I mean, Robbie Farah from his early 20s has been carrying a lot of back injuries.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, there was a point there where Robbie Farah was making first contact, and then like third contact was Aaron Woods coming in and cuddling everyone. So that does take off the pressure off everyone.
Yeah, Robbie has to come in and be the speed bump because no one else is able to do the hard work.
Okay, I've got another question for you, all right?
Yeah.
So Robbie Farah and Benji Marshall, two top players at the Tigers, highest paid players, okay? The club is run like crap.
Yep.
At what point in that position of those two players are you able to look at what's happening around you and what's happening above you at board level and say to yourself, I need to do something here. I need to be vocal here and start calling out people at this club, because it's a very, very delicate situation when a player starts pointing fingers everywhere else, because the media straight away starts going, well, you're the problem, blah, 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 and you get fucking pricks like me that say, well, you're one of the two highest paid players and look at your win percentage. At what point can a player make that call publicly and say, look, something needs to change at this club, but it's not me?
I think history will show that it was 2012 that Benji and Farah both realised that was the situation. Now, a lot of people are going to come out and say that Robbie had Tim Sheen sacked. That's not true. Now, Tim Sheen had made a handshake deal, spoken deal, nothing was written down, with board members of the club at the start of 2012 saying, if we're not in the finals at the end of this year, then I'll step down and walk away. Now, 2012, if many people may not remember, the start of that year, the West Tigers they'd been in the last two final series, and it was widely tipped that 2012 would be the year that they'd be back in the grand final again. That was their window. And it should have been. You know, Benji Marshall had just been named best player in the world, I think it was. So they were in the right place. Now, the Tigers ended up finishing, I think, 9th or 10th that year, and Sheen's refused to leave.
10th. They went 11 and 13.
Yeah. And Sheen's refused to step down. And apparently the players got together. This is only rumours, what I've heard. So none of this bit's fact. But I'd heard that players have pretty much said that something's got to change. Look at Tim Sheen's record. We've been busting our asses and we've made 3 final series in his whole time here. We need to change something. And so the club went, okay, we'll bite the bullet. We'll sack him even though it's going to cost us a shit ton of money. So they did. And they did very little work to prepare for who the next coach was. They got in Mick Potter, probably because he was cheap, because they had to pay out a ton of money on Sheen's contract. Potter was doing good work. They got very close to being, I think they were actually in finals contention when the whole Gordon Tallis rubbish came along. Gordon Tallis reveals that there was some sort of conversation where Farah said something about Mick Potter didn't know what he was doing or something like that, from 18 months before. And Tallis said that he said this because he's trying to look out for his mate, and his mate actually got sacked on the back of it. So some good mate you are, Tallis. Anyway. But that completely screwed them because they ended up getting flogged over the last 6 or 7 rounds of that year, and they missed out on the finals there where they were in the hunt. Then they brought in Jason bloody Taylor, and Jason Taylor's whole thing, I get the impression may have come from board level, was we need you to get rid of Robbie Farah because he cost so much money. And the reason why it cost so much money is because the club made an agreement with Farah that they were going to start repaying him some of the money that he sacrificed in earlier contracts, which is why when he left, he was on $900,000 a year. That's not because that's what he was worth. That's what he was worth plus what he was owed, which shows you how much he was owed, which shows you how selfish he isn't.
And it also is that once again is a symptom of, a rebuild, a decision that's made, a pathway that's been walked down, and all of a sudden we're taking a different pathway. And so the new coach comes in and he's like, well, what's this all about? And they're like, oh, yeah, this goes back a couple of coaches before you when our hooker was giving up all this money to play here. And it's that chopped and changed, and there's no real one direction, and there's no real pathway that the club is just set on. It's everything's a symptom of that. The one thing I would, and I'm going to ask you this as a West Tigers supporter, the one thing I would say, and listening to you talking about Robbie Farah, is that, and this is going to be a difficult question, in all of this podcast that we've talked about, Robbie Farah gets the benefit of the doubt in a lot of these situations.
Agreed.
Okay. Now, I will
say not by all fans.
Okay. Now, I don't think it's unfair. I really don't, because the way that the club's been run has been terrible. But is there anything that Robbie Farah has ever done or said that you have felt he shouldn't have done or said?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what are those things?
I don't know the quotes themselves, but I think the spat with Taylor was just childish. I think he should have forced the club to come out and deal with all of the drama over the Mick Potter stuff, because from what I've heard from a few sources I know around the trap at the time, Farah and Potter got on like a house on fire. And so
really?
Farah's comments about Potter that Tallis reported were, I think, after Potter had been there for about 4 months. And Potter had actually came out in the media shortly after that saying that he did have a communication problem with the players, and he was addressing that. And the year after, when the comments were actually revealed, apparently Potter and Farah were getting on brilliantly.
Yeah. And
so that whole thing ruined what was looking like. We were looking like we were moving towards some really good times there with Potter there. He was making some really good changes and doing some really good things with the club. The stuff with Taylor was just petty and childish, but I understand from Farah's point, he was trying to hang on to his gig. He loved being at the club.
Yeah. I also think there's
he'd never been told. Well, he'd never been told or put in a position where he was made to feel like he was selfish or he was part of the problem, because he'd been made captain.
Yeah.
So the club must have had a lot of respect and trust in him. So it probably would have been a bit of shock for him to hear that from someone.
And the club should never have, because the club really put Taylor and Farah, they just chucked them out to the wolves. And nobody from the club stepped up and said, hang on a second, this is what we're doing. Yeah. Like, it was just left to just turn into a big mess. And a very public one.
You'll find that with everything. Every drama the club has had, it's been left to the coach or the player to deal with, even when it's not even their responsibility. Like the stuff with Potter and Farah. Grant Mike could have come out and just hosed it all down and said, look, they get on perfectly fine now. Everything's all good. That's just water under the bridge. Can we move on now? Instead, he just sat there and let Potter and Farah deal with that every single week. And the media just kept hammering it until they got a result they wanted, which was someone got sacked, which was what happened.
Yeah.
And then everyone talks it was Farah that got him sacked because Tallis didn't like Farah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was something weird like that. Taylor then came along and wanted Farah to play a very restrictive game style, which Farah didn't want to do because he knew it wasn't going to work. It wasn't his style. It wasn't suitable for the team. Mm-hmm. So they brought in Matt Ballin, which was clearly to push Farah out.
And a disaster.
Massive disaster. Because poor old Matt Ballin played about an hour, maybe 80 minutes all up in his time at the Tigers over 3 years.
Yeah.
And that just cost him more money because he was on decent coin when he picked him up too.
Yeah.
And that just added more fuel to it because it meant they had to play Farah.
Yeah. And the other thing was that they had to play Farah, and any time they decided to go in a different direction, it was just so obvious what they were doing, trying to push him out the club.
And that's horrible, given it's someone who passionately wants to be there. And you hear about player loyalty and stuff like that, and you actually have a player here who's loyal to the club and had taken pay cuts for the club and he's currently not on much at all, from what I gather. And you want to take away any dignity he has and anything he's deservedly earned respect-wise there. You're going to strip it all away and make him look like the arsehole and try and force him out of the club. That's just a massive dick move.
And I also think with somebody like Robbie Farah and his personality, and I get his personality because I'm the sort of thing. When somebody says something, I mean, he's a real headstrong person. And his first, like if somebody says to him, look, we're thinking about this, his first response in his head is, fuck you, right? And he has to work his way back from there. And I think that sometimes that's been a disservice to him.
Oh, but, absolutely.
And like I say that as somebody that does the same thing in my life, and it's a disservice to me. But I think that it can make him look like he's doing things from a different perspective than the outcome that he's really aiming for, if that makes sense when I say that. In terms of like, from the outside, it's like, well, he's just been pig-headed. But if you sat him down in a calm moment and said, why are you doing this? He would explain to you that he's trying to he wants to get to an end goal where everyone's happy. Yeah. But from the outside, it looks like, well, he's just been pig-headed.
Yeah. Plus, obviously, no one likes being disrespected. And after the amount of service he'd given the club, to be pretty much treated that way was pretty bloody horrible. And it all played out in public. They didn't have a conversation with him like adults. Oh, I'm just going to put you on the bench. I'm just going to put you in reserve grade. I'm just going to bring in this former State of Origin player. Like, it was pretty clear what they were doing.
Yeah.
He deserved better than that for what he'd done for the club.
Yeah.
And all that did was just harmed the club. It harmed Farah's reputation and it ruined Taylor's career. No one won anything out of that.
No. And
it's just stupid.
Like no one come out of that looking good. I also think that it was handled so poorly in terms of, I think if they'd sat Robbie Farah down and said, listen, Robbie, you're on a big whack of money and we understand that we've signed up to this contract, man, but we feel as though this is going to be the last contract we give you. And after this, we want to go in a different direction as a club. And being upfront with him about it. Instead, the tack that they took was, we want rid of you. We'll play you in reserve grade if we have to. We don't want anything to do with you right now. And, you know, the coach doesn't want you here. Some of the staff doesn't want you here. And it was just a really shit way they went about it.
It was, especially when it came from, you know, coaching staff that came in who hadn't been there for as long as Farah had. It seems really disrespectful the way they went about it. And I think that was what got Farah, just how poorly he was treated. And, you know, similar things went on with Benji Marshall, where the club refused to honour, I think, an upgrade that he was, I think, accepted on a handshake deal or something like that.
Yep, and he left.
And that forced him out of the club.
Yep.
It just shows that the club wasn't just doing this to Farah; they did it to Benji as well. And yeah, I find it hard to blame any of the players that the club's had, even though I'll sit here and mock the quality of players that they've had there, and you know how average some of them may have played. You know, if I was an average football player and I was being offered a contract to go and play for the West Tigers and no one else is giving me one, well, hell yeah, I'd fucking take it.
Yeah. And I mean, you and me could probably name, just off the top of our heads, a lineup of West Tigers players that probably weren't first graders.
Easy.
You know, and it weren't just in the team here and there. Like, we're foundation members of the club for like 3 or 4 years in some cases. And the thing that worries me is I look at the West Tigers now, and I don't know that I see too much has changed with what the problems really are. I mean, you've got a good coach now in Maguire who needs to be able to be there for, and I think we both said this, a good 5 years at the very minimum.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of the same problems that are plaguing the club. A
One of
lot of the no foresight in going forward. I mean, we've talked about this. If Benji and Robbie tomorrow said, "Look, we're just both retiring. We've come to the end of our part of our lives where we want to play footy anymore," the club would be in a devastated position. They'd be in a position where they really, out of everybody that would be left over, how many of those players would you say, well, he's a featured player? I don't know that Brooks is there just quite yet. I think he's going to be there in a couple of years from now, but not quite yet. Robbie and Benji right now are the heart and soul and the driving force behind the club right now, and it's kind of scary when you look at it like that.
Yeah, and they're a club too right now that have got so much money tied up in players who aren't in first grade. Josh Reynolds, Chris McQueen, Ben Madalino, Russell Packer. And Moses and Mbai's on what? He's on reportedly close to $1 million. It's
ridiculous.
Absurd.
Ridiculous money.
It's absurd. And
when
so
I
that's
found
the problem
that
they've
out,
got.
That's definitely the worst contract in the NRL, I believe.
Well, I still think the Blair one's worse because we lost Fafita when he was young.
Yeah.
To sign Blair, and Blair was on $500,000 for that deal. We lost 2 props for that.
Yeah, and $500,000 when that $500,000 was like a marquee player.
Yeah, and that to me is still the worst one. Whenever you make a trade, and you lose a player out of that trade, and you don't get a player to replace them who's going to make up for both of them, that's a woeful decision, and that was always going to be bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, the club needs to do another clean out. They need to start looking at who they're paying the money to. They need to, hate to say it, they need to move on and buy. He's just on too much money. I'd happily have him there if he was on $300,000-400,000 a year, but $1 million, no.
It's ridiculous.
It's wrong.
Yeah.
It's way wrong. Too many players at the club who are just being paid big money and they're doing nothing at the moment. Be it injury or whatever else, they're just not in first grade. You can't carry that sort of cash. But yeah, still seeing some mistakes. I see that I heard somewhere that Warren McDonald, who used to be the recruitment and retention person back when Sheens was coach, he's apparently come back to the club. So there's another bad decision. That's not a slight on McDonald. I don't know what he's like as a person, but I think if you've come from a period where success was hard to come by, then why go back to players, to people and staff who couldn't get you that success? What's changed about them to make you successful again? I don't get it.
Yeah, I always hate that sort of thing. Why do you do what? And clubs do that a lot of times, and it's like you would rather go with somebody that is maybe untried than somebody that you can look at the things that they did while they're at the club and you sort of go, well, that wasn't that good, Yeah,
like if you know what someone's capable of doing and you know that it's not good, why would you take that risk of getting them back on over someone who you don't know anything about? Because at the end of the day, the worst case scenario is they're both going to be the same.
Yeah, the thing I really do. I just come back to the direction that comes down from above at the West Tigers, and I think it's been absolutely terrible from the get-go. I don't think it's any better now. We've seen some of their board members who've been absolutely lauded in the press, and I've said, look at their record. Look at what the garbage the club has gone through under their watch, and it's kind of weird that the club's board doesn't get more of a focus on them, because I really do. I believe it all comes from there. And it makes me wonder if the West Tigers, and I don't think that the Tigers are the sort of club that would be in this position, if the West Tigers were ever privatised and owned by a single individual, I think that they would really get so much more out of that sort of situation, because they would then have a single voice, a single direction, and they could go down the pathway that we both believe that they need to.
Yeah, look, this is the one thing that's positive comes out of this is the miseries and dilemma that comes around Balmain, especially with the board members there, has meant that West Ashfield, I think, now has more seats on the West Tigers committee than either the Magpies or Balmain. And West Ashfield are actually focused on the West Tigers as a brand, as an entity on its own, making them strong. So I'd like to see them have more control over the club and doing things their way, because they get it.
I can't see a single reason why Balmain has any voice anymore on the board, quite honestly. It doesn't exist anymore.
No, well, at the same time, the Magpies shouldn't really have a voice on there either, because their voice is usually about bring back the Magpies, and that's not helpful. That's not moving forward.
Yeah, I just don't understand why it's like that. It should
No,
just be
I agree.
West
As I said,
Ashfield, and that's it.
yeah, as I said, I wouldn't have any Balmain board members on there. I wouldn't have any Magpies board members on there. Just make them West Tigers, rebrand the thing top to bottom, and just everything's got to be West Tigers. West Magpies can keep their leagues club.
Mm-hmm.
Balmain can keep theirs if they've got one somewhere still.
Yeah, it's like a relic.
Yeah, but they should also have a West Tigers leagues club.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if West Ashfield would be open to doing that and just changing theirs to West Tigers Ashfield. They need to do something like that. They need to get the juniors under those sort of names.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple things, but it shows a bit of unity. It shows some direction and some focus. It shows some clarity. The club hasn't got any at the moment. They still think it's 1999. We're still going to survive.
Yeah, well, it's tragic, really, because when the West Tigers are doing well, the crowd's coming out. Like they're one of those clubs, and I've said this before. The Dragons do it when they're going off. All of a sudden they could get 40,000 to a stadium. The Tigers can do it. They can get 40,000 to a big game at the Olympic Stadium. And I've said this: Panthers can't do that. Like when the Panthers go well, their crowds probably top out at about 30,000. They're one of those clubs that if they were going well, it would be good for the game. They're just not going. They're not even close to going well. It's terrible. It's terrible for the game. It's terrible for the West Tigers. I think it's terrible for rugby league in the Macarthur region. That area needs a strong club, and they're not getting one right now.
No, that's right. So, yeah, look, they've finally got the right coach there, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm quite happy that they've got Maguire. I wish they'd have got him when they first signed Taylor instead, but obviously wasn't available then. But yeah, it's they're finally at the situation where they've got a good coach. They have signed a few good young players in Madison, Twal, Momorovsky. Those are some good first signings to make. Now, get yourself some decent props. Get a good prop rotation. And you need to get a new 5'8", someone who can work with Brooks. And you need to get yourself a new hooker because I hate to say it, but from what I've seen from Jacob Little this year, he's got plenty of potential, but he just doesn't. He doesn't do the 1%ers too well at all. And if you can't do that, you can't replace Farah. And I'm not saying Farah does 1% as well. He's had a history of making errors and stuff like that in the past, but he's much, much better with an all-round game compared to Little. That when Little comes in and Farah leaves, the on-field performance is going to take a step backwards. And we can't afford to take that risk, especially when you're replacing some bloke who's 35, 36 years old. You shouldn't be stepping backwards with his replacement.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the strange thing about the West Tigers right now, and if you line them up against the Bulldogs, the West Tigers have... I think that the Bulldogs are closer to getting to where they want to be than the West Tigers are, because you like the West Tigers are going to lose Benji and Robbie in the next 2 years at the very least. And then they've got that big contract for Mbai, who, I mean, that's an albatross contract. There's just no way around that. They really have to almost take a couple of steps back before they can take steps forward, and that's kind of scary to think about. I feel sorry for West Tigers fans because they deserve better. As I've said, it's a good supporter base, and they're just not getting what they deserve out of their club. And as a Panthers fan, I've been through that myself before, but not to this extent. I mean, this is 20 years of this.
Yeah, it's 20 years of it, and they've only had 2 years where they were actually hitting potential, and that was 2010 and 2011.
Yeah. Man, what a depressing podcast this is.
It was.
It's probably one we needed to do, though, hey?
Yeah, it wasn't so much cathartic as I thought it might have been. It just reminded me of all the miseries and how we're still in them.
Yeah. But the good news is, few more years of misery and things might change.
No.
Yeah, I feel sad after this. Wow.
I tell you what, the one benefit it gives you as a Tiger supporter is
Yeah.
when you shit on other clubs on social media, people just go, yeah, you know what, he's a Tigers fan. That's fair enough. You know, he knows what shit's like. It's fine.
Yeah. I'm talking to an expert in things going wrong here.
Exactly. These guys are the talk about. It's actually not even a case of going. That's funny. They're going, oh shit, if he's noticed that things might be going bad for us.
It's like a real wake up call when a West Tigers fan says, you know what, there's some problems at your club.
Yeah, when a Tigers fan comes out and says your club's shit, you go, oh Jesus Christ, what have we done wrong? How do we fix this? Quick, where's the emergency button?
Yeah.
Bail, get me out of here.
Oh, man. That's fucking hilarious. Do you reckon the West Tigers need to change their logo and update it a bit?
No.
Okay.
No, if I would make any changes to it, I'd change the jersey so it stops having those stupid bloody V's on it.
Okay.
Have 3 hoop colours on there, black, white, orange. Just, put the hoops on there. I don't care what design to put them in, but just put it hoop jumpers.
Yeah.
Be fantastic.
Oh yeah, that sounds good to me. And I think the days of needing to have the little magpie on the shoulders. I mean, come on, man. It's 20 years.
I don't even care about that, to be honest. Magpies fans get the shits about it getting smaller every year.
Do they?
Yeah. Well, the Magpies getting smaller. You can barely see it now. Well, what's with the orange on the jumper? Yeah. Those are common complaints, isn't it? Going, mate, if that's the biggest concern you've got, you don't really have much of a grasp on what's going on with the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see a hoops jumper for the Tigers. Not many teams do it anymore, and I think the hoops jumpers always look good, especially those Tigers colours are just perfectly built for that, black, white, and orange. They're a good color. It's a good palette to have for a jumper design, and to have that stupid V thing they had the other day where they had the orange one inside a black one or a white one or something like that. You just look at it going, you can't put 2 jumpers into one. Stop trying. It looks stupid.
I was just thinking that it's a lot of the jerseys they've had over their history, they look like they've got like the top half of one jersey and the bottom half of another and squished them together. And it's like, oh man, this looks like a mess. A lot of them look like, remember during Super League when there was just the multicolored vomit jerseys that they were putting out? Yeah. Rotten.
Perfect. It got worse at the Tigers those years where they had the yellow jumper come out. Oh man, that thing was horrible. And then they replaced it with a grey one. You've got 3 fantastic colours that work well together. Why are you using grey and yellow for fuck's sake?
Yeah.
Oh, that gets me. No, they've got the logo's great. The colours are great. They just got to build a proper jumper. Stop trying to copy everyone else with chevrons, and just go with hoops. You can do hoops. You can do stripes for the alternate jumper or something like that, up and down.
Yeah.
Just keep it simple. Jeez.
Yes, exactly. So, okay. So, in summary, we both feel as though. I mean, I don't know that we fully agreed on the Robbie Farah thing, but I don't think we're at complete opposite ends of the universe either on it. I mean, I just feel as though, you earn a lot of money, you've got to take some of the responsibility for the results. But I do accept that he's been at a really poorly run club. So it's not like I'm saying he's a shit player, really. It's just, I do think there is some responsibility to take. And I think it's hard to argue with that, right? The club's been poorly run for 20 years, still is. They need to go to the MacArthur region. They need to be run by West Ashfield. They need one board, one voice, one direction to be going in.
And that direction being forward.
Yeah, forward, not sideways.
Look forward, don't look in mirrors.
Yep, they need to stop being Wests and Balmain and be the West Tigers going forward.
Possibly they should probably consider changing their name.
What would you change it to?
I don't know, maybe Ashfield Tigers or maybe not even Tigers. Just have something different. Ashfield Echidnas. Just something to completely remove West and Balmain out of the equation entirely. Keep the colours and that's it.
What is something that's unique to the MacArthur region? Blue lights.
Just imagine every game could be played under flashing blue strobe lights.
Yeah. Oh man.
We can only play night games.
Yep. That would be fantastic. Yeah, I can't think of anything that really stands out about that region. Hey, like maybe something about the airport, maybe the Jets. Imagine if they called themselves the Jets. Wouldn't Newtown love that?
That'd go down well.
What if they? Okay. What if they just become the like I don't know. Say you called it the MacArthur Jets. Okay, they wore a blue jersey. That's all I've got.
That's all you got?
Yeah, that's all I got.
So they could become the Ashfield Koalas. I don't know. Who cares what the freaking mascot is? Just, I would not be at all surprised, not surprised. I would not be at all opposed if the club came out and says we're going to change the name and the logo purely to try and move ourselves forward to get away from this dissension that's going on between Balmain and West. I'd go, you know what? I agree. I welcome it. Let's do it.
Yeah,
a lot of people would be opposed to it, and a lot of people would be surprised to hear a person who is as passionate about rugby league history as I am to be so keen on something like that, especially when it means the death of the club I grew up supporting. Mm-hmm. But I think it's got to the point now where the club has to do something drastic like that to move on from the past and start doing something moving forward. If the officials aren't going to do it, then maybe they need to change the club so it doesn't represent either side anymore. Just make it something completely different.
See, I personally, my personal feeling, and I'm not a fan of the Tigers, I think that they should upgrade their logo. I still think it feels a bit joint venture-y. I think they should call themselves Western Suburbs Tigers. I think that would be fine. I don't know why they didn't call themselves that from the get-go. And move to MacArthur full-time. Everything's
I can
Tigers.
guarantee you if you call them the Western Suburbs Tigers, the fans would still be pissed off and they want the Magpie there instead.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel right. We're the Magpies, not the Tigers.
Yes, and I think there's almost a bit of, and we've talked a little bit about this too, the North Sydney thing of like, at some point, all those cunts just die. You know, and all people know is the West Tigers, the Western Suburbs Tigers.
Do I really have to wait until they all die?
That's a good point. Maybe what we need.
Well, right? You know, at this point, I probably do anyway, whether it happens or not. So
maybe what we need is to get all of the Western Suburbs and Balmain fans, right? We get them all together and we just set the stadium on fire there. What about that? Too far?
I'm still thinking. I'm still thinking.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I'll have to do a proper analysis of that and get back to you.
Can we bring up some stats on that?
We might have to. I'll do a graph or two.
Yeah. Graph. Oh, shit. Well, this is, if you're a West Tigers supporter and you've lasted this long through the podcast, you probably feel crap. Go out and do something nice for yourself. Go and, I don't know, get some Oporto.
Get some Oporto. Also, there are plenty of games between the West Tigers and South where the Tigers racked up 50 that you can go and watch.
Yeah, how many?
There's been a few. I think there's been about 4.
Wow.
So yeah, check out those. You know, just for old time's sake, go watch the 2005 Grand Final because you know why not?
Go and watch Robbie Farah beating the fuck out of Anthony Watts.
That is always brilliant. Now that is something that is cathartic.
Yeah, I love that. What a moment.
Best scrum fight in the last 50 years, that.
It was so beautiful. I remember I was standing up like roaring like an idiot when that was going on. Fantastic moment.
Farah just cleaned him up.
Go and watch some Benji Marshall highlights.
Oh yeah, there's like 45 minutes of the stuff out there. Go watch that. That is fantastic.
Yeah, go and watch some highlights of Pat Richards doing some short kickoffs.
Yeah, that's always fun. And you can also go and check out 52 other episodes of Fergo and the Freak.
Yeah. 52. We're racking them up now, aren't we?
We are flying through them. And we might even have a live show coming up soon. We haven't seen anything yet, but we'll just say that anyway, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, with the live shows too, we're moving a little bit towards YouTube. So if we start talking about doing a live show and you see us saying, "Oh, we're doing a live show now," you've got to follow the YouTube link, and it just plays automatically. They're like, "There's nothing you need to do, just watch it."
Yeah. Also, if you've got any questions or suggestions or discussion points, anything like that, you can send them to us on Twitter at FergoFreakPod, or to League Freak at League Freak, or myself at Andrew RP. You can email to podcast at leaguefreak.com. Get in touch. Tell us stuff. Get on to Apple Podcasts, as it's now known, and subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating. Give us a review. Be nice, and we'll give you a massive plug and a massive wrap as well on the next show after you do that. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. And check out Rugby League Project, the #1 sports statistical website in Australasia. Fantastic statistics about rugby league history from all over the world, stuff you will not find anywhere. The Rugby League International Federation website pales into comparison when you put it up against Rugby League Project. The Rugby League Project actually has all of the stats that you're looking for International Rugby League. Better than the NRL website for statistics. It's just #1 for a reason, and that's because it is the best statistical website in all of rugby league. Also, support the Patreon. What's the address for the Patreon page?
www.patreon.com/rlproject. You can find a link on the homepage on the left. It's an orange button of the Rugby League Project website. Get on there and make a monthly donation. It doesn't have to be much, but every dollar helps. And if I reach my goal on there, then I can work on the website full time. I can do the podcasting whenever the hell Freaky wants me to, and I can answer all of your stats questions that you ask me on Twitter, 24/7.
24/7, nice.
What more of a deal do you want than that, people?
Exactly, it's a pretty good deal, eh? For just
exactly.
$5 a month, one coffee.
Yeah, piece of cake, done.
Yeah, easy.
And while we're speaking of great things, don't forget you can check out leaguefreak.com. Great opinion articles, and they go back quite a while, so you can get a good run of recent history of rugby league there too, not just in Australia. He has written, I think, 1 or 2 good pieces about England as well for the British fans.
Insightful stuff too.
Yeah, the rest you probably don't want to read if you're a British fan. If you're Australian fan, the British ones are fantastic though.
Yeah, they're hilarious, but at the same time, sort of tinged with like a sad reality of the dying British game. So, yeah, there's always good fun to read through some of the archives on my website. Also, check out the lookalikes. You'll really enjoy the lookalike section. Some of the fantasy teams I've put together. Some of them need updated, but I'll get around to that one day. Hopefully enjoy what I chuck up there on the interwebs.
Absolutely. And on that fantastic note, and we've given each other a good rap there. That was brilliant.
Yeah, you were really good, Andrew. I really enjoyed this episode. I know you didn't so much, but it needs to be done.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to work on one where you're on the receiving end. And we know what that topic's going to be about.
I don't know. Maybe just life choices.
I can think of a former Penrith coach.
Don't you dare.
Well, no. I've got even the ledger now. I've been doing this for a few weeks now. He's having shit beeped on me about the Tigers. So that'll be our plan. I'll have to work that in somewhere in the future somehow. That'll be fun.
Let's do it.
We'll have to lift the bad language rating to explicit, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Like explicit, there's going to be things that I'll be throwing around, and
it'll be higher than explicit. It'll be Z-plicit.
Oh shit!
Alrighty, people. Well, we'll catch you all later. Thanks for tuning in.